Hi, everybody. It's Christina Quick. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. I'm going to give us just a few minutes for people to come in. If you are watching this as a replay on YouTube, come on over to the Witchy School of Wisdom on Facebook. It's my best friend, my biz bestie, Susie's group, and she teaches about magic and the occult, and she's a female empowerment educator. So she's a really awesome lady. And I just wanted to say, thank you so much, Susie, for having me do this collaboration with you. This is our second collab or third collab that we've done together with your group, and it's just so much fun every single time. I'm having such a great time watching everybody's workshops and catching up with everybody, and it's just a really neat way to just kind of get to know everybody in the group and get to meet some new people and to learn some new skills. So I see that we have some people joining us. So it looks like everybody is finding the notification. All right, let me get to where I can make sure I can see comments. So I'm curious, if you are joining me now, have you ever read with Lenormand? Are you new to Lenormand? Is this something that you've, a cartomancy divination system that you've used in the past? So let me know in the comments below while I'm checking on making sure I'm in the right place and I can access your guys' comments. If you are new to it, if this is something that you've utilized for a while. So let me know where you are with that. All right, looks like we are in the right spot. Can someone let me know if you can hear me and see me okay? Can I get a sound and video check? Hey, Elsie, good to see you. Thanks for joining me over here. Hi, Jessica. Good to see you, Jessica. What are you guys up to today? Hi, Mariah. Good to see you. Very new to Lenormand. Okay, so we have some newbies, and that's okay, because the coolest thing about Lenormand is quite literally that it's so easy to pick up. If you can read tarot cards, like Lenormand is going to be super easy for you. Okay, thank you for the sound check. Hi, Dan. Good to see you. All right, so real quickly, I'll introduce myself. I don't want to spend too much time just chit-chatting away because my goal, my big idea is that I want to try to get through all of the 36 cards in the Lenormand deck today with you guys and give you guys a little bit of an idea about how you can use these for medical readings. So, and then we're going to kind of touch upon, like, is it okay to do medical readings and things like that? Again, we're not going to spend like too much time on that, but I did want to kind of talk about that a little bit. So hi, I'm Christina Quick. You probably recognize me from The Profitable Psychic. You probably also recognize me from the Tarot Biz Mentor on YouTube. And I am just so happy to be here. One of the things I really love to do is I love to help psychics and intuitives, cartomancers, if you read tarot, astrology, whatever it is that you do, if you have some sort of intuitive gift or psychic ability, what I really love to do is I love to help you figure out how to monetize that and how to start actually getting an income from that. And the best case scenario that I would love to help people do is actually quit their job and do this as a full-time thing. I've been doing this full-time since 2012, so this is 7 years for me. And I never really thought I would get here, but I have a bunch of videos on my channel if you want to know more about like my story and who I am and what I do. And I will be including some links where you can, download. I have some great free gifts that you can download, tons of free trainings if you're interested, if this is something that really, calls to you. Hey, Paula, good to see you. Hi, Desiree, good to see you. Hi, Susie, good to see you. So, I was kind of freaking out because I was like, I didn't have a white shirt. And I'm like, how do I not have it? I don't have anything white. All I wear is black and purple and pink. And that's like pretty much it. So I managed to get into my sweater basket in the back of my closet this morning. And I found this, and it's kind of like a silverish gray with like gold glitter on it. And it's just super comfortable. So I was like, that's good enough. Hey, Marissa. Hey, Mario. Good to see you guys. So my hat is, and I'm also wearing, I don't know if you can see these. Fun fact, these actually work. They actually do work. I put it on and I put it in my ears and everything to see it. This is just, I got it from a costume shop. Disclaimer, I am not a nurse. So this is Halloween. This is a Halloween event. So I'm not a nurse. I am dressing up as a nurse for this workshop, but don't think that I'm a nurse or know what I'm talking about medically or anything like that. Hey, Nicole. Hey, Lynn. Good to see you guys. But yeah, fun fact, these actually work. So I was going around the house like last night and I was listening to all my cats and dogs and their heartbeats and things like that. And I was like putting it on random objects to see what it sounded like. And I was like, that is really cool. I didn't realize that the toy ones actually work, but I thought it was kind of neat. Okay, so that looks like everybody's pretty much here. So the first thing I want to start with is the ethics. And like I said, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because I know that knowing me, I could literally talk about this for probably 2 hours, just the ethics part of it, right? That's kind of an issue that I have. There's over giving and over talking and oversharing. So to keep it simple, the ethics that I live by and the ethics that you live by in your own readings is going to be different. Ethics is such a subjective thing to me that I really want to empower you to find your own ethics when it comes to medical readings. And I want you to figure out like what is true for you. There's a lot of opinions out there. There's a lot of ideas about what, I'm sure some people are just going to like be so angry at me for even teaching this method, even teaching this strategy. Like I'm sure there's people out there that think, how dare I, right? But the reality is that I believe in the freedom of information. I believe that it's not the information that is necessarily negative or bad or against ethics or morals. I see that more as like what we do with that information, right? Cat purrs are great with the scope. Oh, you've given me a good idea. You gave me a good idea. Marissa says, should we get our decks out? You can if you want to. I'm going to be using one of my decks that I've created. So you don't have to have your deck out, but you can if you want to. You also may want to take this time to grab a pen and a piece of paper. I originally said I was going to give out a handout that was going to be like the definitions of it. Let me tell you something. I'm going to do you one better because I was thinking about that yesterday or the day before, and I was like, how many of us download stuff like that just we never really use it, right? Like, yeah, it'd be kind of nice to have that for a Book of Shadows or something, but I remember back when I was learning divination and Lenormand in particular, or tarot cards, and while I did have all that stuff, usually it just kind of took up space on my hard drive. Like it never really went beyond that, and so I have done something different than what I said I was going to do. And I really think it's going to be better because what I did is I ended up, and this is a free gift that you guys will get at the end of this training. So make sure you watch to the very end to get your free gift. And the gift is I already recorded it for you guys, but it's a 20-minute tutorial on how to do a medical reading, actually a real case study, like a real client, a real situation that I actually went through and the real reading that went along with it. Okay, so you're going to get that. Another thing that I have been secretly working on is a Lenormand deck that is specifically for health readings. And I think that this is going to be something that's going to kick it up to that next level because I really wanted to create something for you guys that is something that you're going to use. So I'm hopefully going to have that up for sale at a very modest price next week. But in the interim, in the in-between, what I've done is I've recorded a 20-minute sample reading that can show you how to do these kind of readings. And I've also given you in the PDF, there's going to be some additional trainings. Like there's all 36 card overview for absolute beginners. And there's also a video on how to do some combinations and things like that. So I think that that's a good compromise. And I think that that's going to be more effective and more interactive than just giving you something you can print out and that you may or may not use. Does that make sense? Marissa says, if you know the person will check the information out with the health professional, it's okay for me. And that's one of my things for sure. Desiree says, wow, that's great. Marissa says, thanks. Lynn says, well, that's neat. And Jessica says, oh, yes, yeah. So the three things, these are the three hard and fast rules that I live by when it comes to doing health readings and the ethics surrounding that. So the very first thing, number one, is that I don't do health readings blind, meaning that I don't do general health readings. So if I'm going to do a health reading for someone, I need to have a short summary of their medical history. I need to know what they've been going through and what has been going on. I need to know also what is the intention of the reading. What do they hope to gain by that? I don't typically do general health readings because honestly, it's like a shot in the dark, right? And I don't think that that's very helpful. Now, some people might prefer to do general readings, and that's okay. If that's okay with you and that's ethical for you and you trust the information, you trust yourself, and you trust the other person on the other end of that, then fine, by all means, maybe for friends or family or, people that you have a strong relationship with. And so that leads me to number 2, is that basically I need their word that they are under current medical care and that they have a regular doctor, that they plan to see a doctor within the next 6 months of having this reading, and that they have an appointment basically scheduled to follow up with their doctor and with anything that was said or mentioned in the reading. But the basic is that they need a doctor, and I need to know that they have a doctor. If they haven't been to the doctor in several years, they are not a good candidate for me to do a health reading on, because I really like to work with people and do health readings with people that have they really want to have an interactive relationship with their health, and that they are the type of person that is proactive with their health, right? And then the third thing is that they need to be a past or a current client, and they need to have demonstrated that they have a healthy understanding of what I can and can't do. So for example, what I can't do is I can't diagnose you, I cannot cure you, I cannot sell you something that will cure you, I cannot tell you that you will be cured, right? So I cannot predict that you will be cured of cancer, or I cannot predict that you would not have another episode of having cancer or something along those lines. I can't do that for you. Another thing is that I can't diagnose you. So I cannot tell you specifically what illnesses or diseases that you have. I can simply talk about body parts. I can talk about the energy around those body parts. I can talk about chakras and things like that. And I can talk about like certain systems of the body that I might see there might be an issue with. But as far as like, getting a diagnosis or telling you that you have diabetes or that you have, something else like that, I can't tell you that that's for sure what you have. I can only tell you that maybe you have some signs or symptoms that may be related to that disease. And of course, always, letting people know that I am not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I have no medical training. Anything that I say is based on intuition alone, and that's it. And I can't go further than that. So with that being said, I think that that is a really fair list of things that are required to be able to receive a health reading from me personally. So what do you guys think about that? Lynn says, I would be interested in the deck since I have medical intuitive. So that's exactly right. And I created this deck to really help people with, especially if you are a healer already. Let's say if you're a healer and you do like Reiki or aromatherapy, or like in Lynn's case, she does acupressure. And so if you already have, or a massage therapist, so if you already have kind of like a little bit of a healer background, that deck is probably going to be something that you really want to pick up. Hey, Emily, good to see you. Hey, Pamela, good to see you. Lynn says, yes, it all makes sense coming from my viewpoint as an acupuncturist, right? Emily says, does this still go under entertainment for legal purposes? Yeah, all readings are going to go under entertainment purposes. Yeah, for entertainment. Okay, so I'm going to be using this deck. This is the Lucky Lenormand deck. This is my personal deck. In the PDF, there will be a link to where you can actually purchase this if you like this deck. I also have another deck coming out, and I wanted to just tell you guys about that really quickly. So in case you want to pick up a deck, but you have a couple options here. So next week, I'm going to be launching this deck, and I will be launching the health deck. So this deck is a beginner's deck. And as you can see, everything is just very simple, straightforward, to the point. All the symbols are just, there's not a lot going on. But what makes this deck so awesome, right, is that if you take, for example, the writer card, and you can see on the front that there's the name of the card and there's some keywords there. Now, if you flip it over, what I have done is there's a purple side, and the purple side is kind of like the flashcard side, where you can have, I think there's 6 lines, 6 different phrases on each card, I believe, that talks about different ways that this card can manifest. Now, if you are interested in my health deck, it's going to be basically the same deck as this, but it's going to be green, and it's not going to have the doubles, it's not going to have the dual side, it's going to have a regular backing to it. But what it's going to have is on here, instead of the 6 phrases, it's going to have a health related message that relates to this specific symbol. So again, it's not exactly like this deck, it is just one-sided, but it has a phrase on each card that relates to some type of health issue or some system in the body that it may actually relate to. And so that would be really helpful for those of you who are wanting to learn how to do health readings, and in a way that, you know, you have the information there in front of you and you can kind of divine a little bit using that information. Oh, thanks, Emily. She says, that's a great idea. Health readings. Pamela says, I would love to get yours in Emily's deck. Yeah, Emily's deck is also coming out soon, too. Mario says, cool cards. Thanks. Nicole says, wow, that's great. Hi, Ibu. Good to see you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We are about, what, 10, 15 minutes into this right now. So I'm going to try to cap this at an hour. If we do go over an hour, that's okay. But I am going to move kind of fast. And since I am not going to be giving the handout with the meanings, you might want to just write some notes as we're going along. The thing is, though, is that if I go too fast, just, you know, you can rewatch this and go back and fill in all the holes that you have. But I would really rather, instead of you guys writing down the first run through, like you can always rewatch this, right? But instead of, you know, spending a lot of effort writing things down, what I would love for you to do is just be part of the interactive process with us. So let's put on our psychic hat, let's put on our intuitive hat, and let's just look at these symbols from a mediumship point of view of what these symbols, kind of psychic symbols, and what they represent. And we're going to go a little bit slow with the first couple cards just till you guys kind of get the hang of it, and then we're going to go a little bit faster, okay? So the very first card in the Lenormand deck is Rider. And Rider is featuring a person on a horse, typically. And it has some sort of like, they're like a jockey, or there's some sort of like canvas bag or something along those lines that's usually within the symbolism of that card. So the key words for Rider are news, package, and visitor. So when we think about Rider and we think about it in terms of medical readings, think about what it takes. First of all, let's look at the symbolism instead of the keywords. So the symbolism is a man or a woman on top of a horse carrying a canvas bag, right? So when it comes to describing the energy around that card, what are some keywords that you think about when it comes to that? And here I'll show you on a different deck so you can kind of get an idea. So you have the abstract and then you have the literal right here. So a person on a horse. What are some keywords that you guys kind of come up with for that? So when I think about Rider, I think about someone with an athletic ability, right? I think about someone with a lot of stamina, because I also think about like croquet, you know, doing croquet on horseback or something along those lines. So whenever I think about Rider, what I think about is the person's stamina or their athletic ability or even their overall health, right? And so I also think about receiving news, because, right, Rider is about receiving news or receiving a package or a visitor. It could mean that there's going to be health-related news that's going to be delivered soon. It could be documents that are coming in, especially if you have like letter there with it. I've also seen Rider come up with like, you know how the person's on the horse, it could be wheelchair or crutches are going to be involved, something that props the person up. Something fast, runner or fast action, yes, could be that, absolutely. Something fast moving as a health condition, it could also be, that's a really good one, Marissa. Jessica, speed, Desiree says, Charlie horse, muscle pain, muscle spasms. Absolutely. That could definitely be one of them. Yeah, it's really good. So my personal definition, the one that I typically use, is the overall health and well-being of a person, their overall vitality, their stamina, right? But I've also seen it being like a wheelchair or crutches, or even being in a car accident, something along those lines. Okay, so I think you guys are really good in getting this. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, how about clover? Clover typically represents luck, opportunity, and good fortune. But also think about a clover outside of those keywords. What do you think about when you think of a clover? What is it? It's a plant, right? It's a plant. So one of the keywords or the key phrases for clover could be something along the lines of a quick recovery, or it could be a small improvement, you know. It could also talk about seeking out natural remedies like homeopathy or plant medicine. It could talk about good health. Yeah, definitely. An improvement to the health. Yeah, very good. Oh, allergies, Marissa says. That's a really good one. Allergies could absolutely, especially if you had like bouquet in there as well, or garden, you know, especially if you had that to kind of back it up, that would be a really good one. Hey, Mariah, good to see you. Herbal medicine. Allergies, herbal medicine. Those are all really great words to use for that card. Okay. Number 3, what about ship? A ship is a vehicle, right? A vehicle that sails over water. It can contain certain things. It has a direction that it's going in, right? So some of the keywords for ship are adventure and travel. So could that mean possibly that you may have to travel for medical help or assistance? Could mean something along those lines. It could also mean that I've also seen it come up like seasickness, or feeling like nauseous, like feeling, or vertigo, where you can't really catch your balance, like, you know, that kind of feeling when you're on a boat and you kind of get sick. I've also seen this card come up when it talks about like fluid retention, right? So having too much fluid or not having enough fluid. There's something along the lines with the fluid intake that's really important here. Jessica says hospital ambulance. Yeah, it would be the ambulance, right? Because it would be the vehicle. Emily, motion sickness, vertigo. Yep. Travel related illness would also be a really good one, Marissa. That's excellent, because that would mean like, you know, like jet lag or something along those lines, or especially if you had garden, which is more like a contagious kind of disease. Yeah, absolutely. Emily says, I'm good at this. Yeah, you are. Everybody's really good at this, right? Really good. Okay. How about house? Now that's kind of a tricky one, isn't it? So the keywords for house are family, comfort, and security. Family, comfort, and security. So when I also think about house, I think about like the 4 walls, right? So I think about the foundation of a house. And so I also think about with house, like the bones. I think about your bones. As a place, it could be your home or a hospital, as Jessica says, yes. It could also mean that your health is coming to a period of stability, right? Ellen says home health care. That's a really good one. Jessica says taking care of a sick family member. Oh yeah, for sure. Marissa says being housebound. Emily says weight. Yeah, it actually could be weight. Yeah, for sure. Desiree, hospice. It could be hospice, coming to the home, especially if you had like cross or something along those lines. Jessica says genetic illness. It could be genetic illness. I would typically associate tree with a genetic illness because it's within your family line. It's within your hereditary. but that's going to be the next card that we're going to talk about. So yeah, pretty much. So on that note, family illness, it could be, or like, your kids get sick, then you get sick, everybody in the household is sick, that sort of thing. Okay, next is tree. What about tree? So tree represents health, ancestry, and fertility. So this is something, this card would really tell me that, something is like hereditary, or something that's like passed on through the generational line. Also, it can represent fertility. So that could represent like IVF, or it could represent trying to conceive. It could represent issues with that, depending on the different cards. Like if you had tree and stars, you might think about sperm, or if you had like tree and lily, or even moon, you might think of it's more on the female side of the relationship. Emily says, my kids, one sick, the next, right? One gets sick, the next gets sick. Hereditary illness. Jessica says environmental illness, like something you could catch from your community. That's a really good one too. Yeah, for sure. Ooh, broken limbs, Desiree. That's a really good one. Broken limbs, like a broken arm or a broken leg. Yeah, yeah. Especially if you had like tree and scythe or something along those lines. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Okay. Yeah, especially if you're, Emily says spiritual illness, especially if you were looking at like ancestral karma, or you're looking at like generational curses or something along those lines. For sure, you could absolutely see some type of spiritual illness there. That's maybe something that's ancestral and karmic in that nature, for sure. Okay, next card is clouds. So clouds is about uncertainty, confusion, and doubt. When your head's in the clouds, you're not thinking clearly, are you? So clouds can represent a couple different things, but typically what I think about when it comes to clouds is some sort of mental fogginess. So it could be like Alzheimer's or forgetfulness or something along those lines. Jessica says something that attacks the core of your health, like terminal illness. Yeah, it could be something like that, especially if you had, she's talking about tree, I believe. So tree could be, terminal if there was like coffin next to it, for sure. Jessica says confusing symptoms. Yeah, so it could be the issue is confusing, or it's just like Marissa says, there's no diagnosis, not really sure what's going on. Emily says thinking in the mind, MS. Yeah, oh yeah, my sister-in-law has MS, and she has struggles with this a lot, with her memory, for having MS. Brain fogginess. Yep. Let's see. So when I think about clouds, I think of someone's, like, typically speaking, I think of someone's mental state. So I also think of like depression, or I think of like schizophrenia, or I also think about like another thing that it could show up as like the medication that you're on is messing with your memory. Ooh, Jessica, that's a really good one. Hypochondria. So if you are a hypochondriac, it's all in your head, right? Definitely. Could definitely be that as well. Okay. I got it. She's like, I don't know if I spelled that right. I gotcha. Okay. What about snake? Ooh. Now, in Lenormand, snake is not good. It is not the ancient symbol of healing and liberation that it is that we know. It's in other paths and traditions. In Lenormand specifically, snake is bad. It is not a good thing. So snake can represent treachery, betrayal, and lies. But also thinking about, being high on your medication for clouds. Yeah, like for sure. But also think about snake as in, look at the body of a snake. A snake slithers. What does a body do? Or what does a snake do? A snake eats, doesn't it? That's literally all a snake is meant to do. It has an opening and it has an ending, and that's it. That's all it's really meant to do, is just eat. And so it could be something poisonous that you've ingested. It could be, getting sick from food poisoning or something along those lines. Or it could be more insidious, like, someone's intentionally poisoning you. Medication could be poisoning you as well. Mouth, tongue, yeah, it could absolutely be that. Yeah. You could also, if you had like house nearby, or you had some more of the other cards that are kind of associated with mouth, it could also be like dental issues, right? It could be like something along with your teeth or your gums or your tongue. Intestinal. So yeah, that's exactly right. So when I think about snake, honestly, my go-to is that it involves someone's digestive system. So this is the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the intestines, and the colon. Basically, that one straight shoot from enter and exit, right? But yeah, it can also mean being poisoned by something as well. Oh, that's a really good one. Desiree says snake oil or maybe medical fraud. Yeah, that could certainly be the case, or that you're on the wrong medication, or that someone has misdiagnosed you or something along those lines. Yeah, really good one. Okay, so let's talk about another fun and interesting card. Let's talk about coffin. Coffin is perhaps the most ominous card in a health reading. Some people are going to say that maybe it means that an illness is coming to an end or something along those lines. And, that could be true. But Lenormand is different than other types of cartomancies, and that there are specific negative cards and there are specific positive cards. Coffin is one of those negative cards. So any way you slice it in traditional Lenormand, when you're reading, it typically is a negative situation. So it means ending, tragedy, or loss. So yeah, this, coffin to me could absolutely represent something that's terminal. If I saw a coffin come up in a reading, I'd be like, you need to be at the doctor's ASAP, right? You need to schedule your appointment ASAP. You need to make sure that you're seen, because coffin is one of those really serious cards in the deck, and it can also symbolize like a sudden downturn. It can represent the need for like bed rest, or it can even, if you had like tower next to it or house, it could be you need to be on bed rest or you need to be admitted to the hospital. Yeah. So it's a pretty serious card to get. Coffin is absolutely one of those ones where you want to take that kind of seriously. You don't want to scare your client. That's not what you want to do, but you do want to take it kind of seriously. Emily says death, terminal, limb lost. Yeah, so if you see coffin, don't play around with that. Okay. Next is bouquet. And bouquet is a grouping of flowers. So when I think of bouquet, I think of what Marissa was talking about earlier with like allergies and seasonal allergies and things like that. Yeah, Jessica, coffin could absolutely be coma. Hey, Jennifer, good to see you. She says she loves these decks. Thank you so much. Yeah. So coffin could absolutely be coma, or it could be unconsciousness. It could, something along those lines. And bouquet is the courtship, gift, or helping hand. So thinking about bouquet, what I think about is that a person's health is on the mend, right? That there's an upturn. So much different than coffin where there's a downturn. Bouquet is like things are going to be all right. Or it could also mean the need for like ongoing help, because bouquet is like help that is offered to you. So it could represent having to get ongoing help. Like you might have to go to more appointments, you might have more checkups. It could be like help as far as like physical therapy, or it could mean, if you had it with bear, it could mean something like maybe you need to work with a nutritionist or something along those lines. But bouquet really represents that things are, turning out to be a lot better than what we originally thought. And that also, I've also seen bouquet and garden next to each other, meaning that the client should seek out some sort of support group. So if they do have a diagnosis and they do realize that they are living with something, bouquet and garden I've also seen as like advice to go seek out some support groups that, you can like talk to other people that are dealing with the same things that you are dealing with. The gift of life. Mm-hmm. Okay. How about Itchiness. Yeah, itchiness could be definitely one for bouquet. How about scythe? So scythe is another one of those kind of tricky cards where it is mostly negative than it is positive. And typically speaking in Lenormand, scythe is about cutting. It's about cutting or getting rid of something. Something gets cut or removed. Okay. So whenever I think of scythe, I think of surgery, or I think of some sort of like procedure. Jessica says amputation. Amputation, removal of something. It can also represent the possibility of a sudden onset of illness, or something that was going to require some minor surgery. But it can also represent, now this is interesting too, but it can also represent like a sudden or unfortunate accident or a medical mistake. Stitches is a really good one, Jessica. But yeah, so it can represent, the need to puncture something. Yeah, going under the knife, or it can even mean like a mistake was made, or like, if any of you have ever had a gallbladder attack or had your not your pancreas, your, what's that little thing that, appendix. If you've ever had your appendix or your gallbladder removed, that's like, it hits you and then like a couple of days, like you're in surgery, and it's sudden and it's fast and it moves really quickly. Yeah. So that's kind of another situation where that can kind of come up. Hey, Roxy, good to see you. Roxy said I had to move on mobile as I could not comment on desktop. Oh, really weird. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you guys are getting something out of this. This is great. Yeah, Scythe is one of those kind of scarier cards, kind of like Coffin to see. Okay, so the next card is Whip. Number 11 is Whip. And whip can represent argument, strife, or dispute. Okay. So when I think about something medical or health related that relates to whip, I think of something that's really strenuous, that's going to require a lot of physical activity, right? Oh, sure. Roxy says for scythe could also represent acupuncture, for sure. Yeah, because it's a breaking of the skin. Yeah. Oh, Jessica says domestic violence could absolutely be a domestic violence issue. Emily says coughing over and over. Yeah, something that's like repetitive, something that is strenuous, something that is really kind of a negative card. Mouth issues could be mouth issues. So when I think of whip, I think of also whip can represent sex also. So whenever I think about this card, I kind of think about the reproductive anatomy, especially if you had like Lily nearby or Moon nearby or some of the other more feminine kind of cards. I've also seen whip represent libido, so someone's sex drive. So that's another thing that can kind of come up. Jessica says whiplash from an accident. Yeah, for sure. If you had like whip and scythe next to each other, and maybe like ship or something along those lines, or rider or something like that, you definitely whiplash from an accident. So that's a really good one too. All right. And you're going to find, as we're going through these cards, you're going to find that, yes, some meanings can apply to certain cards, but there's better cards. There's going to be better cards in the deck that can apply to certain meanings. Oh, yeah. Roxy says, whip, I feel it may represent inflammation. Yeah, and Emily says physical abuse, illness is kind of like what Jessica was saying earlier. Yeah. All right. So next cards are birds. Birds. Kind of an interesting one, right? I always think that the animal-based symbolism is always really interesting to think about. So birds can represent gossip, rendezvous, or negotiation. So when I think about birds, I think about the person's voice, right? Because birds are chirping all the time. So I think about the person's voice. It could also be like your throat or your larynx, the loss of your voice, something along those lines. But I also have seen birds come up because with birds, it's always about multiples. There's multiple birds. There's flocks of birds, right? So when I think about birds, I think about getting a second opinion or reaching out to maybe like a specialist or something along those lines, but seeking more opinions or seeing more than one kind of doctor. Jessica says throat. Emily says speech impediment. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Could absolutely be something along those lines. It could also mean multiple meetings that you're going to have or lots of appointments that you're going to have to keep up with all at the same time. Birds could also be mental illness too. It could be like anxiety for sure. Jessica says multiple symptoms presented. Yep. Yep. Emily says strep throat. Yeah, definitely for sure. Very good. Okay, the next card is child. So child represents innocence, naivete, and spontaneity, but airborne illness is real. That's a great one, Jessica. Really good. But child represents innocence, naivety, and spontaneity. So whenever I think of a child is small, right? So whenever I think of child, I think of something acute or something smaller than originally thought, or something that you're going to recover from soon, like a cold or like the flu when your kids get sick or something like that, you know. Or I also think about something that's communicable. So something kind of like with garden, you know, that it's people can catch it, it's contagious, that sort of thing. Emily says, I had clients with teeth issues when that card came up. Interesting, because of the beak. Yeah, interesting. Emily says small illness. Yes, so it's something small, something not as serious as originally thought, right? Something that you're still going to have to tend to, something you're going to have to, you know, work on comforting yourself with, but nothing to be terribly alarmed with. Yeah. It could also be childhood illnesses. Like what about chicken pox? You know, something along those lines. Emily says children-related stuff like a runny nose. Yeah, runny nose, conjunctivitis in the eyes. It could also be other like childhood-related illnesses. Roxy says childhood illness like chickenpox. Yeah, like chickenpox or measles or something along those lines. Very good. Oh, Jessica, you thought of chickenpox too? Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the next card is Fox. And Fox is a tricky card because it's tricky. And that's the literal meaning of it, is trickiness. Caution, deception, and cleverness. So whenever I think of Fox, I think of something that's presenting as one thing, but it's actually something else, right? Because Fox is a trickster, has the trickster type of energy in Lenormand, depending on the tradition. If you go with the German or the French tradition, sometimes it can represent work as well. So it could be a work-related accident, but it could also be something that is you have symptoms that might be this thing, and your doctors maybe think it's one thing, but actually it might be something else. Jessica says difficult to diagnose. Difficult to diagnose is a really good one. Or even having the wrong diagnosis, or a disease, condition, or illness that is presenting as one thing, but is actually something else entirely. Emily says on-the-job injury. There you go. Really good. I'm getting medical insurance issues with that Fox card. That's, yeah, for sure. Like maybe they filed the wrong insurance card. I just actually had that happen to me this year. I used the wrong insurance card. Oops. Jessica says something that is sneaky under the radar. It shows up too late. That could be something too. Fox, like sciatica, that is actually a symptom of something else. Right, exactly. Like you have you have the symptoms, but you think you maybe know what it is, but you're not 100% sure. That's kind of what that represents. Okay. Next card is bear. Bear. So bear is really interesting because there's a lot of different things that it could be. Bear is one of those really open-ended cards. So what I have in here is protection, resources, and power. What about your diet? That's one of the things that really stands out to me with bears. Having a healthy diet, they eat basically berries and a little bit of protein like fish. So diet could absolutely be something, or being overweight, carrying around too much weight, or it could be kind of like what we saw if we had bear and whip, there could be inflammation. Jessica says willpower to heal. Yeah, absolutely. Could definitely be that. So when I think of bear, I think of describes a person's diet and intake of food. It could also suggest that diet's going to be a really big part of it, but it can also represent, I've seen bear represent endocrine disorders like diabetes, or what else? Hypothyroidism. Jessica says nurturing yourself. Emily says weight, heaviness in the legs. Yeah, definitely. Not being, able to support your own 2 feet, especially if you had like Rider and something along those lines with it. Marissa says immune health. Sure. Very good. Uh-huh. Whatever your mother has genetically, that could also be one too, because yes, because the bear is usually like the mother bear. It's usually a feminine card in the deck. And so it could be, an issue that, your mother has, or especially if you had like bear and tree, it could be something that is passed down from the mother. Very good. Really good one, Emily. The bear hibernates, so maybe bed rest needed, that as well. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it could represent that you need to take a rest. Really good. All right, so the next card is stars. Perhaps the best card in the whole Lenormand deck. Stars represents healing, recovery, and also it can represent your network. So this to me right off the bat is like seeking a specialist, or having a crew of doctors that are helping you out, or getting a referral for a specialist, something along those lines. But I also think about, when I think about star, is the systems of the body. I think about someone's like nervous system, right? Or experiencing like fibromyalgia, or nervous system flare up. But I also see it as a recovery from, right? And it can also mean seeking out a specialist. It's basically what I've already said. Yeah, star is great. It's a really great card in the deck. And it's one of those ones where it's quite interesting because it has multiple meanings too, kind of like bear. I've also seen stars represent the eyes, because I think about like the twinkling of the eyes, right? I've also seen star represent pills or medication. Pills or medication. Like with crossroad and like with birds, there's an idea of multiples here. Jessica says clarity on the condition, needing to look deeper into research the disorder symptoms. Yeah, for sure. Okay. The next card is stork. So stork represents an improvement, an upgrade, or a resolution. An improvement, upgrade, or excuse me, not resolution, I'm sorry, relocation. Can't even read my own text here. Improvement, upgrade, and relocation. So whenever I think about this, is I think about traveling a distance. So stork is like traveling from one distance to the other, right? Or like an upgrade or a change. So whenever I see stork, I think about like having to travel, maybe even flying to see a specialist somewhere. But I also see that it's about like a turning point, a good turning point in one's health. It can represent also, you think about stork, and what are the main characteristics of stork? The legs and the beak, right? But the legs really stand out for me. So I also think about with stork, especially if I had Rider there too, I think about like someone's mobility. I think about the person's legs or their feet. I also think about traveling long distances for help. Jessica says, I know it doesn't usually mean this in Lenormand, but I think of babies. Yeah, it can represent children as well. It can represent pregnancy. Yeah. Not children, because child would be children, but stork would be like pregnancy. Desiree, pregnancy. Yeah. It can also represent that as well, especially if you had stork and let's say lily or moon next to each other. All right, Emmy, I'll see you later. Have a good day. Have a good Friday. And an even better weekend. All right, next card is dog. So dog is about being trustworthy. It's about being dependable and loyal. But what are some of the features and attributes that are really associated with dog? It's a sense of smell, right? Their olfactory sense. So whenever I think about dog, I think about the person's sense of smell. Like they could be smelling ghost scents, or they could have a sinus infection or something going on with the nasal cavity. It could also be something with the mouth, right? So something that's connecting. Whenever I think of dog, I think of like your ears, your throat, and your nose. I think of like that whole sort of system, whatever system that is. I can't think of it. Ears is, yeah, like having an ear infection or a sinus infection, your sinus system, is that what it's called? But yeah, that's what I think about when it comes to dog. So it can also represent issues with the mouth and also with the gums too. If you had, especially if you had other cards in the deck really backing that up, you could absolutely, if you had like birds with beak or some other cards that the mouth is really prominent with that card, it could definitely mean something's wrong with the mouth or the gums and things like that. Teeth issues, right? Yeah, exactly, Roxy. Teeth issues, yeah. Because that's what I think about when I think of my dog and all the money she costs me on dental work and stuff like that. So teeth issues could absolutely be part of it for sure. Or if you had like dog and baby or dog and child, it could be a baby teething, something along those lines. Gum disease. Oh, animal bite. That's a really good one too, Jessica says. Yeah, it could absolutely be an animal bite. That's a good one. All right, so the next card is Tower. Tower. So when I think about a tower, I think about a person's lumbar system. I think about their spine. I think about their neck. And I think about like their kind of like lower back. Like I think about their spine and their ability to stand up on their own, right? And so that's one thing you can think about. And so as far as like a place goes, that tower would literally be the hospital, right? Because it's a place or an institution, or it could be like a college that has a medical college or something along those lines. Or it could be, having to go into a very large building or having to go somewhere where there's a lot of floors and there's a lot of different things that are kind of going on. Spine for tower, for sure. Vertebral column, spine, broken bones, falling from a high place. That's, yes, absolutely. Especially if you had tower and like scythe together and tree, maybe like that's literally falling from a tree, right? So Lenormand is really cool in that it can be literal. All right, next card is garden. So garden represents gathering, public, and community. So I think about garden as in this is the highly contagious, like we need to quarantine the area. You cannot go out in public and nobody can come see you, right? Also, this could also be something like, especially if you had clover or bouquet along with it, it could be like seasonal allergies or something in your environment, right? Because someone else said some environment with one of the other ones. I think someone said environment with tree. If you had garden in there, then I would say for sure, because literally garden is the environment that you are in, right? So when I think of garden, I think of illness or condition or disease that may be highly contagious. It could also reference a person's immune system or their ability to fight off disease. Okay. How about mountain? Ooh, this is a tricky one, right? Got to think about it in a little bit of an abstract way. So mountain represents obstacles, challenges, and delays. So when I think about mountain, I think about a medical situation where there might be a blockage or an inability for one thing to travel to its intended destination. So if you had mountain and steak, there's a ball caught in your dog's stomach or something, like there, or, there's a blockage in your intestines or something, or there's a blockage somewhere. The thing that needs to go where it needs to go cannot go where it needs to go because there's something standing in the way, or there's you think about climbing a mountain, it's kind of an arduous journey, right? So you think about it's taking a slow journey up there, or it's taking longer than it's supposed to, longer than it's intended, or it's working much harder than it needs to. So it could also represent like indigestion, like backflow. I've also seen mountain kind of represent like paralysis or even immobility, like not being able to move, right? Or an accident or injury while you're on a hike or something. Pamela says, I thought of hair. Yeah, it could absolutely be hair, especially because mountain is tall. And that's the characteristic of mountain, is that it's looking up, right? So Bart Simpson hair, yeah. Mental illness, something to do with the head, absolutely. If there's clouds like around that same spread, for sure. All right, so the next card is Crossroad. And Crossroad represents going in two different directions. It represents choices, options, or being at an impasse. Roxy said, I think about bug bites and mosquitoes and spiders, right, with outdoors and mountains. Yeah, like environmental kind of things, for sure. So Crossroad can represent being at a medical impasse, or having to make a decision. So one of the situations where I've seen Crossroad come up is where the person was looking at two different types of treatment, two different forms of treatment, that they needed to make a decision on which one to go with, right? It can also symbolize that there are multiple treatment plans, or that there may be multiple illnesses actually that are present at the same time. Jessica says treatment plans, yes, multiple options. Cancer for Crossroads. Tell me why, Pamela. I'm just curious about why you think cancer. What makes you think that? I'm just curious about how you got to that conclusion. All right, the next card is mice. So mice represent thievery, stress, and worry. So whenever I think about mice, I think about a deterioration, an illness or a condition or disease that has definitely deteriorated, right? It can also mean something that needs to be replaced, because mice chew and gnaw on things, and they, you have to replace the wood, or you have to fix something, right? So I could see as something like a shoulder that needs to be replaced, or a hip that needs to be replaced, something along those lines. I also think of mice when it comes to like something that maybe has been gnawing away at your health for a long time, and you just really weren't aware that it was as damaging as it was, right? So it could be something that really kind of started out small, but something that has escalated through a length of time that now it's become something really significant. Roxy says, crossroads can mean an illness that requires treatment of the spiritual cause. Definitely. Jessica says, contagion, cancer, and terminal disease. Yeah, there's something that's eating away. So for sure, it could be a cancer or a tumor, or something that's eating away at some part of your body. Yeah, something that eats you from the inside. Oh, parasites. That's a really good one. I mean, how did we get the bubonic plague, right? Roxy says osteoporosis. Sure, it's something that kind of sneaks up on you, right? It's something that it takes a while for it to kind of become apparent, and then one day you realize you can't make it up the stairs, or one day you trip over something, or you stub your toe and you realize you break your toe, and you're like, why are my bones so weak, right? It's something that has been going on for a long period of time, that it just kind of all of a sudden sneaks up on you. You guys are really good at this. Oh, asbestos would be something too. Like, yeah, so if you had like mice in house, it could be something that's in the house, like mold or asbestos, for sure. Pamela says, like you said, I saw cancer when you pulled up the card. Do we treat cancer, or do we go with an unconventional methods? Or, oh, okay, yeah, like, for example, seeking out a natural path, or versus doing chemotherapy, right? Or the same with other health problems when all the options have been exhausted. So it's a what do we do card to me. Search for more options, right? Jessica says for mice could be contaminated food. That would be definitely, because you think about mice and they're always eating things. So yeah, especially if you had like mice and snake, that could be contaminated food or, you know, some other combination like that. What about, stomach virus? Yeah. What about heart? Well, that one's kind of easy, isn't it? So when I think about heart, I think about the literal heart. I think about your arteries, your veins, your vessels, your blood system, possibly even your lymphatic system, because your heart is what pumps the blood through the lymphatic system, right? Oh, I know, Pamela. Yeah, about your dad's house for sure. Ugh. So heart is kind of like it can mean a couple different things. So it really can describe something that talks about the heart, the arteries, veins, vessels. Oh, another really good one for heart is like blood pressure or high cholesterol. Pamela says clogged heart. Yeah, that's definitely, yeah, for sure. High blood pressure. It could be high cholesterol. It could be heart attack. And actually, that's the case study that I am giving you guys as going to be in the PDF that you guys get, the 20-minute reading sample that I've given you guys. It was about a woman that experienced a heart attack. Oh, Jessica says emotional illness from stress. So it could be literally be a broken heart, couldn't it? Literally be a broken heart. Yeah. Lungs. Yeah, I think of tree when I think of lungs, but it could be when I think of lungs when it comes to heart, I think of like COPD, or I think like if I had tree and heart, I think of like COPD, or I would think of like if it's kind of like a Fox situation, right? Like maybe you're having trouble breathing and you think it's your lungs, but actually it's your heart. Your heart can't process and pump healthy oxygen to your blood. Pamela says the emotional heart, the broken heart. Yeah, could absolutely be that. Okay, so the next card is ring. Kind of a tricky one, isn't it? So whenever I think of ring, I think of something that's going to be around for a while. So the idea with ring is that it's a commitment, right? A dedication, a promise, or a vow. So this is something that's going to be around for a while. This might be something that's like a long-term illness. This could be something that you're going to have for the rest of your life. It could also mean that you're going to have to commit to, you know, exams and checkups on a regular basis. This might be something, especially if you're dealing with cancer, you might have to, you know, visit and get a CAT scan or MRI. I can't remember which one you get, but for cancer. But you might have to, you know, do that every 6 months or something along the lines where it becomes a part of you. So like, for example, it could be like an oxygen tank that you have to kind of wear around. It's something that's kind of attached to you, right? Or it could mean perhaps maybe like a prosthesis or something along those lines. Roxy said ringworm, maybe, especially if you had like mice or dog or fox or something along with that. Pamela says it could mean the spouse is ill. Yeah, it absolutely could mean that. Jessica says it's a vicious cycle, right? Like it's a cycle. It's something, and that also is moon as well. We'll get to that too. But yeah, it's something that it's coming around. You can't get rid of it, right? Or it's something that maybe like it's happened to you again. Like this is not your first time dealing with this. Maybe it's something that you've dealt with in the past and now you have to deal with again, right? There's a circle. Something that you're chained to, right, Pamela? Like an oxygen tank or is it colostrophy? I can't remember what that word is, but that type of bag where people have, if you have really severe Crohn's disease, then you have to have your stomach removed and you have the bag. You guys know what I'm talking about. Or it can mean like a catheter or something like that, depending on the cards around it. It's something that is like attached to you. The next card is book. Book. So book traditionally represents hidden, secret knowledge and research. I think of book as in like you need to start researching your medical history, or you need to start researching what it is, because there needs to be like an empowered, proactive kind of way that you're addressing this. It could also represent, this is more like when people are talking about like insurance and stuff like that. Book can represent the need to do one's own investigative research, but it can also represent that a diagnosis will soon be revealed, right? Like there's something that you don't know that is going to come to light, and you have to research how to find that out. Pamela says the medical journals. Yeah, this could also be like your medical files. If you, especially with letter in there somewhere, could be your, like the letter is the documents within the book, right? So letter would be like your files, and like the book would be your overall file. Jessica says finding a different solution to a problem, right? Like maybe, you know, what you've done so far is not really working, and you're going to have to go back to the drawing board, go back to the book, go back to the WebMD, you know, figure out there's something maybe that hasn't not been revealed yet. Yeah. Prescription, yes, it could be a prescription for sure, especially if you had like book and stars or some of the other kind of multiple sort of cards in the deck. Okay, the next one is letter. Roxy says book research your illness about alternative treatments. That's really what I think book is. Yeah. How about letter? Letter could be your prescriptions. It could be also your ability to communicate, right? Because to write a letter, you need to be able to formate your thoughts. So if you're someone like has had a stroke, or you're someone who is having difficulties communicating, like if you had letter and birds next to each other, you might see that there's a difficulty in that person communicating, a difficulty in the mental processes. It can also represent your hands or your fingers, because what do you write a letter with? You write a letter with your hands and your fingers. So it could represent like arthritis, or it could represent issues with the hands as well. Pamela says, I was thinking of the doctor's medical journals, the famous ones. I can't think of the name. Yeah, certainly for book. So letter represents messages, info, and correspondence. It could also mean that you're waiting on something, like you're waiting on results, you're waiting on lab results, right? Or you're sending your lab results to a different person, something along those lines. We're going to skip man and woman because that's kind of obvious. You guys are going to see how I do that in the actual tutorial, because I really would like to get through the rest of these cards, and we're kind of going a little bit over, but hopefully that's okay. So we'll just blow through the rest of these here. Doctor's letter to your work, or work compensation, or referral. Yeah, like if you need for sure, that's a really good one. Like if you need a letter to excuse yourself from work or something like that. Jessica says medical records. All right, what about Lily? So Lily in Lenormand means maturity, peace, and wisdom. So whenever I think of Lily, I think of conditions that are related to aging, like hormonal issues like menopause for women or andropause for men. I also think about a weakened immune system, because you think about elderly people that they don't have a good immune system. It's really difficult for them to fight off disease, right? And so what I think about with this is like, okay, Mariah, thank you. Thanks for giving me a little bit of extra time. I was trying to hurry, but we have so many good messages coming in. I really want to make sure I read them all. Memory loss, yeah, especially if you have like clouds in there as well. Memory loss, fragility, weakened state, not having a lot of strength. So if you had like Lily and Ryder, it could be something along the lines of like they have no vitality, or they're feeling really weak and they don't have a lot of life force. So yeah. Okay, next one is herbs treat with. Yeah, it could be, well, no, not lily, because you can't, lilies are toxic. You can't eat lilies. So I wouldn't think of herbs. I would think of herbs with clover or garden au bouquet. Yes, it could be menstrual issues as well, but it's mostly associated with aging and not necessarily like female reproductive. That's, to me, that would be more like WHIP. But yeah, so menstrual issues, it could definitely be more like menopause, because Lily is about maturity, it's about aging, it's about more towards the end of one's life. Lily could be allergies as well, yeah, especially if you had like garden or bouquet in there as well. Okay, so what about sun? Sun is basically the opposite of coffin. Sun is like one of the best cards that you can get in the whole deck, right? It's kind of like that way in tarot as well. But Sun represents one's vitality, but it says happiness, resolution, and success. So it could represent overcoming an illness. It could represent a successful completion of a treatment plan. Yep, Jessica says cure. So it talks about, you are going to get through this. It's something that you're going to come out on the other side of, or especially if in the future position, like if you had this on the right-hand side or you had this on the bottom row, Sun would be an excellent card to get. So with Sun, it describes an overall improvement in one's health and vitality is restored. Oh, yes, something I did not put on here is that it could symbolize conditions associated with masculine hormones, okay? So it could be testosterone based. Sun and healing. Now, on the flip side of that, we have the moon. So if the sun is testosterone and masculine hormones, then moon certainly could be feminine hormones as well. And so when I think about moon, it could be hotness and fever, yes. And I was also going to say, so here's the thing, though, is that Lenormand has specific ideas of what the cards represent. So when we deviate from like the positive and negative aspects of the cards, then we start reading a little bit more intuitively. That's not necessarily wrong. But like I said, there are certain cards that are good and there are certain cards that are bad. Sun is one of those ones that is good. But certainly if you're reading more in an intuitive way, you could, and you need vitamin D, that's a good one, Pamela. But it also could be hotness, fever with Sun. It could also be like an infection, infection, like feeling warmth, like having an infected bite or something along those lines where it gets hot, It could also be if you had like Sun and Lily, it could be like experiencing hot flashes, something along those lines. Okay, so when I think about moon, yeah, rest, but I also think about moon is the moon goes through phases and it goes through cycles. So I think of an illness, condition, or disease that is cyclical in nature, something that maybe is not always present but tends to come around. Like, for example, seasonal affectiveness disorders. It's a type of depression that, people get when the sun starts to, when the nights get longer and the days get shorter. So it could be something along those lines. It could also represent something to do with feminine hormones. Moon for me is menstruation. So someone said, I think it was Desiree was talking about menstruation with one of the cards before. So for me, that's moon, because the moon every 28, 29 days goes through a new cycle. So I really think of like the menstruation. Hot flashes. Yeah, Roxy says with the sun. Pamela, sun and moon need balance, right? That's so funny, Roxy. That's so funny. Okay, we just got a couple more. We can do it. We can do it. Okay, so then we also have key. 33 is key. And so key represents solution, access, or revelation. It could be, Jessica, sure. It's so if you had someone that wanted to know if they were going to get pregnant and you had moon and you had stork, or moon and child or something along those lines, that you could definitely have something to do with about pregnancy. Where you had moon, child, and scythe, or moon and scythe, the period, the menstruation is cut. So it stops. So it could be that, they are pregnant. Okay, so what about key? So key is about like a revelation. It's about an insight. It's an aha moment, right? It's about something that is revealed. So when I think about key, I think about a condition that, the cause will be revealed, or that a treatment plan will be successful, or like example, if you're going to do like a crossroads reading and you were going to compare and contrast two different types of treatment plans, and you saw key in one of those, it could be that, yes, this is the key. This is the literal key that you need. This is the right treatment plan. Jessica says finding the right diagnosis. Very good. So I wrote about key describes a condition that there is a known cure or a cure will be found. This card can also represent answers or solutions to one's health issues. Yeah, so very good. So it basically means that, there's going to be a resolution for it. Fish. The next card is fish. So think about fish for a moment. Fish are under the water, and how do they breathe, right? So they breathe through the gills. They filter water, and basically what they do is they receive oxygen out of that water. Pamela says, for key, you have the key to your own health. You can get yourself through it. The human body and brain are amazing, right? So when I think about fish, I think about the body's filtration system. I think about like the kidneys. I think about the liver. I think about the bladder, the urinary tract, the excretory systems of the body. So I think also about like the need to detox, right? Like maybe drinking too much water or too many fluids or something along those lines. It also could mean a detox from drugs or alcohol. Jessica says blood. Yes, so it could be something to do with the blood, with the flow of the blood. How is the blood filtering, especially if you had like heart or some other kind of card like that with it as well. Yeah. So fish, it's like the filtering. It's filtering something, right? So it could be filtering your blood. It could be filtering with your kidneys. It could be filtering with your bladder. It could be liver, filtering toxins out from your liver. Maybe your liver is unable to filter those toxins out. So yeah, very good. All right, 2 more cards. Anchor. Flushing your system, that would be another good one for fish too. Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that comes to mind is checking your potassium and your magnesium levels with fish as well. Lungs, yeah, so lungs could be a good one too. Hey, Victoria, good to see you. So when it comes to anchor, what do you think of when it comes to anchor? So anchor means endurance, fixation, and stability. So could it be that the person will experience some stability in their health? It could also represent that an illness, condition, or disease is going to be present for a period of time. It's going to be something heavy that you're going to have to deal with for a little while. So when I think of anchor, I think of something that could be somewhat permanent or an affliction that is going to be around for an extended period of time. I also think about like an illness or condition that could be in stable condition. So if someone is like got into an accident or something, or someone's in a coma or something along those lines, and you're not really sure if their health is going to be stabilized. If you got anchor, that might suggest that there's going to be a period of stability. Jessica says limited mobility. Yeah, especially if you have like rider or stork or some of the other cards that are like leg based. Pamela says stick to the protocol. That's another really good one for anchor, for sure. And finally, cross is perhaps the second worst card to get in the whole deck. So we're going to leave off on an interesting note. But the last card is cross, and it's just about under coffin as far as negative goes with this particular card. So whenever I think about the body and I think about the cross, I think about the back and shoulders, you know, like where you would be feeling that if you were keeping your hands out, you know, out for a long period of time. Like it would be like in the middle of your back, right? It could be like probably around from the bottom of your neck to like your upper back, your lumbar system, something along those lines. It could be issues with the shoulders. It could be issues with the neck, with the back, right? But it's typically going to be quite a negative card. It says obligation, burden, or sorrow. So it could absolutely be a condition that's difficult or nearly impossible to cure, right? So this card can also symbolize aches and pains, and especially like in the sort of back-ish area. Could also mean more spiritually that, you know, maybe it's time to start, as they say, getting right with God and all of those things. Like so many people I've spent time with that were at their end of their lifespan, that becomes one of the things that people tend to go through, is they tend to go with this idea that they want to be close to God or close to their divinity and start, you know, thinking about that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was saying just now. That's like the basis I was kind of forming it off of. Jessica says taking care of a dying loved one. Pamela says calling in the priest, right? Yeah, which I wouldn't be telling one. And that's another thing too. Just this is the last thing I'm going to leave you guys off with, is that you're going to see a lot of things in your readings, and it's up to really you to determine what is appropriate, you know. But if you have someone that is caring for an elderly person and wants a health reading on that elderly person, and cross does come up, you know, at that time, maybe it might be appropriate to say that. But if you don't have that background and you don't know it's already a terminal thing that you're dealing with, kind of like what Pamela says, that may be something that you may want to omit. So it's always a good idea to be really cautious. It's always a good idea to, you know, give less information than more, in my opinion, and to remember to stick back to the original question and to not do this thing where you're, you know, you have the question and you have the information that people want to know, and then you're going off on this other tangent, and you don't want to worry people. You don't want to upset them. You don't want to make them more stressed out. So there are going to be some things that you're going to see, and that's going to be knowledge that is for you and not for them at that time. That may be something that they come back and talk to you later about, or something that you could say, well, I did see this, but I didn't bring it up because I didn't feel that it was appropriate at that time. But now that you mention it, you know, and then you can kind of go in and talk to about it. Deanne says maybe shortness of breath, and fibromyalgia. Sure, could absolutely be that. Yeah. So I just thank you all for joining me. I'm going to give you guys this PDF right now. I'm going to pin it here so you guys can download it. It has a 20-minute tutorial that I've created for you guys. It also has some other trainings in there as well. So if you are new to Lenormand, you can go through it's like a 1-hour video where I talk about all of the cards in a lot more depth and how they can kind of show up. And then I also have another video in there as well that talks about some of the combinations that you can start reading combinations of cards. Pamela says, I've helped a few people silently crossover. That's another thing too that you can do as well. Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I just thank you, and thank you, Susie, for hosting this event with us. I've had so much fun being here with you guys today. And if you are interested in monetizing your psychic abilities, or you are interested in becoming a reader, I would love for you to hop on over to my group. Let me find you the link real quick, and that'll be the last thing I give you. We're always looking for more people to come join us. Yes, you guys are welcome. Thank you so much. I'll see you later.